Hello, legendary listeners, and welcome to the Legendary Ladies podcast, where we have thoughtful and entertaining conversations about pop culture, storytelling, and media. This week, if you are listening or watching on our YouTube page, you will notice we are missing Kat. So this is the second in our duo series. Tonight is just Morgan and I. Kat is off watching Into the Spider-Verse, which, let's be honest, Morgan and I really want to go see.
We do. We
kind of wish we were there.
That would be amazing, but
we decided what better time to talk about Tudor history in the form of a musical than when Kat's not here, because God bless Kat, she would be so bored. And if you have listened to us for a while, you know that Morgan and I are obsessed with Tudor history, like freakishly. Then they made a musical.
They made a musical. I listened to the cast recording and I was like, oh, I have opinions. I have hot takes. I need Amy's opinion on this. It's funny because I think that if I had dragged Kat to the musical, she would have enjoyed it. But
I think so too.
I think if I had pitched it to Kat like it's a musical about the Tudor queens, she would slowly she'd be like that Homer Simpson gif going into the bush. Like, no, I don't want it. But so we are obviously talking about the, I guess now Broadway musical 6. I have my playbill with me, which is I think it's like, it's not very long musical. It's like 90 minutes maybe on stage.
Was there an intermission?
There wasn't. No,
I didn't think so.
It was
felt
really.
Like it was
It was short. Yeah. And it came over from the UK. So I had heard about this musical, I think when it came out in the UK, and I was like, well, this sounds like incredibly my jam. I really want to see this show. And then it was announced that it was coming to Broadway, and I was like, perfect. I'm not going to listen to the soundtrack. I'm going to go see it, and I'm going to experience it the way it's meant to be experienced. It came over to Broadway. It was in previews, I think, in March of 2020. So I don't even think that it debuted before COVID. I think it was literally, it had either just left previews or it was still in previews when COVID hit, full on hit, and everything Broadway had to shut down, all the theaters closed and shut down. So it was one of those things where I had been really looking forward to going to see it. And then it was like, womp, womp. And
that was a really good sound effect. That was great.
Thank you. So I remember early days in the pandemic listening to the UK cast recording of the show and just being like, one day I'll see it. And that one day was last Friday, where finally we had been talking about seeing it, obviously since some of the COVID restrictions had lifted up. So for ages, and then finally it was like, let's just go. It's the Friday before Memorial Day. We'll take off. We'll make it an extra long weekend and we'll go to the show. We had perfect weather too, which is always my concern about getting Broadway tickets in the winter is what if it's bad weather? What if there's a snowstorm and I can't get in? They're so expensive.
Wait a second. You saw it in May.
Yeah, I saw it in May, which is that's why I'm always
you didn't go to see it in winter. Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm always nervous about buying Broadway tickets for anything after December and on, because the weather can be so inconsistent.
Yeah.
So I'm always afraid oh yeah, I'm going to get Broadway tickets for January, and then there's going to be the storm of the century and I'm going to just be out that money.
Did you guys have nice, sunny weather on Memorial Day?
We did. It was really nice, actually. Very, very picturesque.
It was.
Did you not?
It was 60 degrees and very cold and overcast in San
Whoa,
Diego. Yeah,
that's so
we
funny.
were at the park and it was uncomfortable. We had rehearsal that night and I wore my Star Trek bomber jacket. That's how cold rehearsal was.
That's crazy.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, I think we were
fun.
out. I think we were outside the entire weekend, essentially, which is, I feel for the East Coast, that's actually kind of weird, because usually our Memorial Days are a little bit sad. You go into it being excited, and then day 2 it rains, and then it just rains the whole weekend.
Yeah, we had May gray, and now we've got June gloom. I was like, I would like some July. I can't think of anything.
Sun.
I couldn't think of anything to rhyme with July. Fly, sunfly. I
I
don't
want
know.
I want to be so fly in July.
Fly in July with sun, please. Um, okay, so you saw it. Is it? It was on. So it's now officially on Broadway, and this is not any of the original cast members from the UK.
It's not, I don't believe so. I actually think that all of the original, to be honest, I think that the original cast members left the show before I got to see it. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that they might have had the original cast for a little bit of the Broadway run, but by the time I got to see it, I think it was completely different cast. And honestly, I honestly don't know. I wasn't like, I didn't know who exactly was in the Broadway run. It's not like how I had like an encyclopedic knowledge of the Hamilton cast when I went to go
Mm-hmm.
see that. Um, but I thought
So,
everybody I saw was really good.
so the one with the purple album, the
Yes.
live on, that's the one you told me to listen to. So I listened
Yes.
to the original Broadway cast live on opening night one. And I'm honestly really happy that I did, because having like the audience cheering and everything, that really gave me the vibe that you described.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
because I didn't really get that the first time. I'd listened to sporadic songs. I didn't listen to all of it. And I was like, that's not my cup of tea. Mainly, I just
Yeah.
didn't like the Anne Boleyn thing, which we'll talk about.
We will talk about, I was excited to talk to you about that. So
Mm.
I will say that I noticed a couple of like small changes between the two albums, more specifically in the Catherine Howard song. Now
Really?
I can't say how it was done in the UK version, but the UK cast recording is very much like the beginning of the song, like very Ariana Grande, very like Pussycat Dolls esque, and it's kind
Hmm.
of like that the whole way through. Whereas the Broadway version starts that way of like, oh my God, every guy loves me, and then halfway through kind of gets to like, oh my God, I wish these men would like leave me alone, and then kind of gets to her kind of having like a meltdown at the end of it. And on stage, so the only people who were really on stage the whole time are the six queens.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just like a house band in the background. So during that song, when she's like singing, all of the queens are kind of like grabbing her and like touching her in different places.
Mm-hmm.
I think I actually have a picture that I can show, but like, yeah, so this is sort of during the period of time where she starts to kind of like
Oh,
freak out, and like it's like all these hands on her and like ways
that's
that
really
like,
cool.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of creepy. And I actually really liked the way that they did that and like reimagined that song, if indeed
Yeah.
the staging wasn't like that in the original version,
Mm-hmm.
because I like the first time I had heard that Catherine Howard song, that was kind of my big critique of it. Is like, well, it's like just like a sexy song, but like she did not live like a sexy life. Like,
No.
um, whereas I think the Broadway version is a lot more cognizant of that fact, and is like by the end when she's like freaking out of like, I wish, I thought this time was going to be different,
Uh-huh.
versus like the my memories of the other version was that it's like a little bit more like poppy all the
Mm-hmm.
way through.
It it's interesting because that was the one that I felt like I had. No, was it that one? No, the Anne Boleyn one was the one where I had the most historical critique.
Oh,
But I
yes.
think, yeah, we will discuss that. But the one with Catherine Howard, I thought I was like, I'm pretty sure like she and Culpepper, they were in
Yes.
for it,
That
and
was
she made
that
it
was
sound like she wasn't in for it. They were so
That's
involved.
that was kind of my I love that we picked the same like history nerdy things to like fixate on, because that was
Yes.
also my critique of it, is that like the early parts of the song where it's like her, piano teacher or something, and she's like literally 13 years old. They have it like very Ariana Grande, like he was really cute and he taught me how to play the lute, and I'm like, ew, you're 13. Meanwhile, by the time they got to somebody who she actually like arguably like had a love connection with, like had like like a actual romance with,
Hmm.
that's the one that they played like, I just wanted to be friends with him and he wanted more than that, and now I'm sad
Yeah.
about that. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that you were involved in that the
Very
whole way.
deeply. Like
Oh.
she was the only one where like historically they could actually prove that she had been in a consensual sexual relationship with Thomas Culpeper.
Yes.
And so that was the one I wish that they had changed the theme of that song. Everybody else, I guess I can kind of go with it. But that one was like, this is not Catherine Howard at all. Like, it just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. That was kind of one of my like things that I pulled out where I was like, I got where they were going with the song, and where they were going with like trying to tell, if they're kind of like summarizing her story, what they're trying to get with it. But I was like, I don't know, in the particulars, I don't know that it works all the way. So I guess we should like skip back just in case people aren't super aware of what Six is. So Six, I think we mentioned before, is a musical. It's kind of like a pop rock style musical about the six wives of Henry VIII, and the very sketchy framing, because it doesn't really have a story so much as it is like a lot of singing and like performance. But the very sketchy framing is that here, the six wives, it's like they're kind of in a band. It's kind of like they're in a reunion band, and they're all competing for who had it worse. Which one of them had it the worst of all, and that person will be the winner of some dubious prize. And they're all kind of pitching to you why their story is the worst one of all, with some fun like I think that framing works well in some cases. Like the Anne of Cleves one, I thought was an incredible, like to contrast that against the framing of like, we all had it so bad, and then Anne of Cleves like walks up and she was like, it was really tough to like have this castle and just like be able to like spend my own money. That and, was like, really
not
tough.
Have a man to tell me what to do. And I was like, yes, because we've always agreed that Anne of Cleves has it great. She was the smart one. Henry's like, you do not look like your profile pic. And she's like, oh, you want to divorce me? Okay. And she's like, yeah, no problem. And Henry's like, really? Within like a couple of weeks, everything's worked out. He's like, do you want, I'll give you a house. And she's like, no, it's fine. And he's like, no, please have the house. And he gives her a house and an estate and money and everything. And then randomly he goes over to her house late at nights and it's just like, yo, I want a girl to talk to. And she's like, bro, I'm here for you.
Anne of Cleves is I know a lot of people talk about like Catherine Parr as the survivor, because Catherine Parr is the last of Henry's wives, and she outlives Henry. But they're like, oh, so obviously Catherine Parr like won like the game of like, you know, queens or whatever you could say. She really didn't, because
I think
like,
Anne of Cleves did.
Yeah, she had a tough go of it, and Anne of Cleves just kind of immediately went, I'm good. And ended up just being able to like live a really independent lifestyle as just a wealthy woman in the you know, the
Tudor time period. My favorite is like, at that point, Henry was not good looking anymore. He's
prize.
Big, he's cantankerous, prize. he's and so she's like, oh, you don't want me to get with that? Oh no.
Oh no. I was so looking
I don't have to sleep
forward.
with that.
Like, I know.
And they make fun of that in the song. So that was the one song where I'm like, hilarious, spot on, so good. I love that one.
The Anne of Cleves song, I'm like 10-10, no notes. I think it's called like I have to look it up on Spotify, but I think it's called Get Down, basically, is the name of the song. And she talks about being like the queen of the castle. It's basically it's a really fun song. It's really upbeat. I like to dance to it when I put it on. That one, I think I really I love that framing of like, yeah, like, okay, her story sucks if you think about it, but then if you think too hard about it, you're like, actually, pretty
not
sweet.
bad.
Not a bad deal. Pretty sweet deal. I mean, not great being in like a country where you don't know the language or anybody, but like, I don't know, apparently she had like poker games in her house back. You know?
She became like the super cool single aunt that everybody wanted to hang out with.
She's just having parties, inviting people over. Hey, come hang out at my castle. Not bad. I don't mind it. She has a line in the song where she says that her horses or her carriage can go 12 miles an hour, which made me laugh so hard.
So there's six wives, like quick little history lesson, six wives, and each one of them gets a song. So there's like an intro song, and then there's a random filler song, the Holbein House, which I could have done without. Like, what the hell? What the hell with this like techno music?
Yeah, they
shit
have
going down.
They have like a House of Holbein song, which is all about Hans Holbein, which was the guy who would paint all the big Tudor portraits that you've seen, the big one of Henry VIII and all of that. Those are all Hans Holbein portraits. So the idea was like, all the pretty ladies in Europe, they would all get they would all get their portraits painted by Hans Holbein, and it kind of talked about the terrible things that they would do to make themselves look better. But it was like the song is like almost a rave style, and
rave is great way to describe it.
It's like house dance music. It's like doonch 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 kind of music. And in the show, they put on like these sunglasses, and everything is kind of like black, kind of like a black light vibe. They're like neon green sunglasses, and they're all like raving. It's very fun, but I can see
it's very
how,
fun
like,
in the show.
In the show, it's really fun. I can see how, like, listening to it, you're like, what is this?
Yeah, I think I only listened to half of it before I was like, next, get to Cleves song.
I got it. So it's the six wives. So the first one is obviously Katherine of Aragon, who was.
I love how you say obviously. I'm gonna play Kat here for a second. Kat would be like, not obvious.
I know. I realized we're like so in the weeds of like history nerding that people who have no idea are like. The cats of our listeners are like, what are the cats of our
listeners are like, yeah, obviously Katherine of Aragon.
Oh, yeah, right. So there were 6 of them. Katherine of Aragon was his first wife. She was the one who he tried to divorce, and she was like, no, I won't be divorced. He wanted to divorce her to marry Anne Boleyn, who we've talked about a lot on this podcast. We both like quite a bit. Anne Boleyn. So that back and forth ended up creating the schism in England with the Catholic Church, which created the Church of England, and sort of England slide into Protestantism. So huge in the Reformation.
They basically, the Pope would not annul his marriage. And he's like, oh, you won't annul my marriage? I'm just going to start a new religion. And he straight up left the Catholic Church so that he could annul the marriage with Catherine. So technically, did he end up divorcing her or annulling the marriage? I think he annulled the marriage.
He might have annulled the marriage. Because I know that there was like a lot of stuff with like the succession afterwards, because he would take the kids out of the succession and then put them back into the succession, and it was like a whole thing. He said his theory was always that he wasn't legally. Not legally. He wasn't ever like actually married to Katherine of Aragon, because she had previously married his brother Arthur, and they had slept together, which Katherine denies because Arthur was like a little sickly dude. Probably that didn't happen. But he was looking for any excuse at the time. He was like, oh, that there's this one line in the Bible, you remember the line, and that line gets me out of this 23, 24 year marriage. And she was like, yeah, I don't think that's gonna work for me. Overall, I don't think I'm not down with that. But he was the king, and he broke with the Catholic Church in order to be able to marry Anne Boleyn, and started his own church. He was like, I don't need to follow the Pope. I can start my own thing. Unsurprisingly, since Anne Boleyn was more on the Reformation side, kind of like leaning towards the Protestantism side that was kind of up and coming, the new church that he created kind of ended up being more like the Protestant church, and then eventually kind of became the Protestant church. But at the time, he was just like, I need to get out of this. I need to get out of this marriage.
Rude.
I guess I'll just create my own religion. A really tough way to get broken up with, I'll be honest.
Yes.
And then who next is Jane Seymour.
After Anne. Yep.
After Anne.
Yeah, Anne gets her head chopped off, by the way. She basically fails to, she has multiple miscarriages. She has one daughter, Elizabeth. And then after multiple miscarriages, she has not delivered a boy. It's becoming increasingly frantic on Henry's part to get a male heir, which Anne cannot, quote, seem to deliver. He basically contrives all these charges with Thomas Cromwell at the time. And they come up with ways to basically frame Anne into having slept with a whole bunch of men, including her brother, which is hugely illegal. And they frame her for witchcraft. They basically say that she seduced the king into marrying her with witchcraft. And they ask her all these things and she denies all of them. And they're like, well, you're wrong. You did all these things. And so they chop off her head, in addition to her brother's head and all of the heads of the gentlemen who they say she slept with.
Yeah, like I think it's her and 5 men that
Mhm.
are beheaded because of this, this basically this theory that they have that she has been stepping out on the king, which is ironic because he is actively stepping out on her with Jane Seymour.
With Jane Seymour.
And days after he has her beheaded, like days they are married. He and Jane Seymour are married. So makes you think that maybe those charges were 100% fake. There's also I always find it really fascinating that there's like arguments about who actually pulled Anne Boleyn down. Was it Henry because he was sick of her? Or was it Thomas Cromwell because he was sick of her? And that's my favorite. Listen, I want to live a life in which there are multiple people, multiple suspects for my beheading. She lived like a queen. She died like a queen. I think there are pretty credible theories that like Thomas Cromwell might have been the full architect behind the whole thing.
Yes.
That he might have because they were at the time that she was getting that these charges came against her, they were actively beefing over what to do about the money from the dissolution of the monastery. So after the break with the Catholic Church, they looked around, they saw all these like religious houses that were, taking in quite a bit of money, and they were like, well, you don't need these anymore. And so they were just kicking out monks and nuns and stuff like that, just kicking them out of their homes, taking all their money. Thomas Cromwell thought that they should take that money and they should put it into like the royal purse. And Anne Boleyn thought they should take that money and that they should help the poor. So a pretty big difference of opinion. I think Anne Boleyn's personal, or like one of the preachers at the time that was kind of very much in her pocket, did like a whole sermon about essentially taking her side of the debate and kind of like calling out Thomas Cromwell publicly. Anne was not a subtle person. And when she did not like you, you knew about it. So I always think it's interesting that there's like, was it Henry? Was it Thomas Cromwell? Was it kind of both of them at the same time? Was it just kismet of like the stars aligning perfectly at a moment when everybody kind of didn't like her?
Wasn't it, isn't there also a theory that Cromwell, oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of facilitated the introduction of Henry to Jane.
There is.
That he is responsible for bringing the Seymour family in, which is another problem because ultimately Cromwell did not get along with the Boleyn family and Norfolk. They didn't get along with the Duke of Norfolk. So they were beefing, and so the families were beefing, and Cromwell was very much like, this is not going to work for me. So, like, before we get to Jane Seymour, is my problem with Anne Boleyn's song the same problem as your Anne Boleyn song? I want to know.
I don't think we can hold off any longer. The cats of the audience know who Anne Boleyn is now.
Yes.
So let's just get into her. So her song is called "Don't Lose Your Head." So all these songs are, by the way, like as now that we're talking about it, in the playbill. They talk about the queenspiration for every song. So Katherine of Aragon's song, which is "No Way," which is a great song. I love that one actually.
I love that one. I thought it was really well done.
She's basically just like, you think that you can replace me? No, sir, you cannot. Her queenspiration is Beyonce and Shakira, which I totally see. I can totally buy that. Anne Boleyn's queenspiration. I'm interested. What do you think her like? What musicians do you think that were her inspirations?
Is it going to be like Zara Larsson, someone? I don't know. What is it?
So it is Lily Allen and Avril Lavigne. And if that doesn't give you an idea of what that song is like, I don't think anything else will. It does have a very Avril Lavigne kind of
Yes.
at it, like early 2000s.
Early Avril Lavigne while I'm
Lavigne.
still in middle school.
Yeah,
Kind of
yeah,
a
it's
vibe
got a
to it.
very Avril Lavigne feel
Oh
to it.
my God, what was that?
Oh my God. Okay, so first off, I just want to say, early on in the song lost me because she goes, "Politics, not my thing," and I
me
go,
too. False.
Excuse me there.
Yes. Anne Boleyn was hugely into politics. She had whole reading
politics.
clubs. She was all about getting women into being clever and intelligent.
Arguably,
which is another problem.
Yeah, arguably her biggest, one of her biggest things that she was advocating for was for the Bible, which was at the time in Latin, to be in English so that the common people could read it. You know, she is like, the common people will be able to read it, like thinking that everybody like her could read English. Obviously back then, the common people, not well known for being entirely literate, you know, not like there were schools back then that like just like taught poor people anything. But she was like, yes, the common people will be able to read it if it's in English, which is like, God bless you, heart in the right place.
She was a huge activist.
Yes.
For the common folk.
Yeah. So I have a huge issue with the portrayal of Anne Boleyn in this show, because even in the Broadway show, because there is a little bit of like back and forth between the queens between songs, and she's a little bit of like, when they start talking about, they lead up to her in a really fun way, I thought, which is like a very Hamiltonish way, like, oh, everybody's waiting for you to talk about this person, and like it felt very Hamilton to me. And then when it like everybody pulls away on the stage, she's sitting there with her phone like this, like she's taking a selfie. And I was like, all right, that's incredibly funny, and I love that. But also the rest of the
doesn't
like
fit.
There's no part of the song that talks about her being intelligent, talks about her being ambitious, talks about anything at all that was sort of like Anne Boleyn as a person. I think they've got maybe the attitude correct, but the details are all off.
Yeah, it's like they knew that they wanted one of the queens to be the like Gen Zer, like texting all the time, blowing bubble gum. Like exactly. It's like they knew they wanted that. Why didn't you make it Catherine Howard?
I was about to say, I feel like they also kind of went that way with Catherine Howard, where she is where if you had to guess what her queenspiration was, what would you guess the Catherine Howard queenspiration is?
Was it Taylor Swift?
It is not. It is Ariana Grande and Britney Spears.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
And Ariana
Britney
Grande,
Spears, I get.
Makes perfect sense because, and I'll pull her up again, she's got that big high ponytail, which during the show he whips around a bunch and like plays with and like has it like that. So like, yeah, but if you already have one character that's like a little bit like, oh my God, here I am, I don't know that you necessarily need two that are that way. And the Anne Boleyn character is very much like, I'm going to party. I just want to dance and sing. I don't care about politics. I just want to hang. Oh, this cute guy is texting me, so I'm going to text him back. Oops. Like, I'm in trouble now. And it's like, it's such a gross oversimplification. Like, it's not even an oversimplification because it doesn't feel like her at all. Like,
no.
There were little moments in the show where I was like, well, it seems like you did like read some history, because like that is like a more obscure thing that you pulled in.
Yeah.
But you don't know.
How did you get Anne so wrong?
Yeah, how'd you get Anne? Because they mention at one point she makes a joke about wearing yellow to Catherine's funeral, which she did and is hilarious. You know what? If you want to be petty, you got to be petty on the level of Anne Boleyn. She was like, I never liked that lady. She was always saying I was illegitimate, and now she's dead, and I'm not sad about it. But like, how do you get something like that right, and then like get the rest of her character wrong? Like it even seemed like she was like, oh, I was over in France and I was bored, so I came back. But she was like classically educated in France.
Yes. And she learned like the art of seduction in France. Like the other thing too is there's one line towards the end of it where she was like, so Henry was stepping out, so I decided to as well, and decided to go dating all these guys. And I was like, no, there's no evidence that Anne Boleyn actually had an affair with any of these gentlemen. And I think it's universally like, historically accepted that these charges were 100% fabricated.
All fake, all fake. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't like that either.
No, I didn't like that at all, because that's just wrong.
It's so wrong. They skirt around it by being like, if Henry can step out, then I can flirt a little, which sure, but like the average person is not going to like hear that and think, oh, she was just talking with some guys. They're going to think, oh, okay, well, she thought if he can step out, I can step out, which, is not what happened. She was like,
not at all.
And it's funny because she was like kind of a renowned at being like witty and smart and like a good conversationalist. So she probably was a little bit of a flirt. I think she was kind of known for that. But that was like a thing that Henry knew about her, which is, I think they talk about this a lot, that like what he liked in her as like a mistress, or, you know, like somebody who wasn't his wife, he suddenly hated when she was his wife. So when as a mistress, he loved that she was smart and that she challenged him and that she had all these opinions that she was sharing and that she was flirtatious. And as soon as she was a wife, suddenly he was like, oh my God, she's got so much to say. She's got all of these opinions. Like, why can't she just like be a nice, docile little wife, like Tudor wife, like I want her to be? And it's like, you knew exactly who this woman was when you
married her,
aggressively went after her.
When you literally broke from the church to marry her. I kind of wish now, like that we're talking about it, because if they wanted to keep that sort of like, oh my God, like texting girl, what they should have done was framed it towards the second half of the song with like how she's being gaslit from Cromwell. Like that would have been really interesting. Like, oh my God, this guy's gaslighting me. And oh my God, I'm getting these texts. I didn't send that. Where did he get it? Like that would have been really clever. Like he broke into my gram. He hacked it. Like,
yes, I think that would have been great actually, if they had been like, oh my God, I'm beefing with this guy, versus the way that they went with it. Like, I think that there is a way. I don't have like a huge issue with like her attitude in general being like, she says it a lot in the song, sorry, not sorry. That feels character correct for Anne Boleyn. Like, I think she would be like, I'm actually not sorry. I'm actually not sorry I broke up your marriage. Like, but so
I'm like, oh, I'm sorry you got a daughter. Not sorry me either. Like,
yeah, I have one too. Didn't have help me either. But I think, like, to your point, there were so many interesting things happening around her downfall. It wasn't just that like she was flirting with some guys and got caught, or she was stepping out and got caught. Like, she didn't probably do anything at all. She like maybe made a comment or two that she shouldn't have under the circumstances.
Yeah, but
and that's it. That's all that's all that's got your head off of your shoulders in that, like, with Henry.
That's the only one I wish that they had really changed. I think everything else I could go with. That was the one where I think originally I had went straight to the Anne Boleyn song without listening to anything else, and was immediately like, nope, don't like this. Don't like this at all. This was like 2 years ago. I was like, nope, don't like this play. They got it wrong. What the fuck is going on? Like, I don't like this. I wish that I had started with Jane Seymour's song.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about Jane. So I think the Anne Boleyn was kind of like mischaracterized the whole way through. Yeah. It is my biggest issue with the show.
Historically inaccurate.
I think that the song is fun. I think that if they had tweaked the lyrics, if they had made her like smart, like they at least made Catherine Parr at the end, like I would not have had a problem with it. Even if they went to that, like, I think kind of tired, like she was scheming the whole time to get what she want angle, which is like also kind of not historically accurate. Like, she really tried to get Henry to leave her alone several times before she was like, yes, this is happening. But yeah, like if they wanted to play the like scheming Boleyn angle, I would have even been okay with that. But like, you have to have her have some intelligence. She can't just be like a social media influencer in the corner. I'm sorry, that's like not accurate. No. But I think the Jane Seymour. So Jane Seymour is next in line. She's the one who actually gave Henry a son. And who died from complications from childbirth. And Jane Seymour is tough, because I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Jane Seymour is boring. We just historically we don't know much about her. There's like nothing really nothing much
Juicy?
Has survived from her, like from her specifically. Like from Anne and Catherine, there are and Octavia there. the
Sorry,
kitty.
I had to bring my cat over.
Oh, she's so cute. But from like Anne and Catherine and a lot of the other queens, there are letters that survive that give us an insight into like what they were like and like, you know, how they talked and how they thought. Not much survives from Jane. She had a pretty short tenure as a queen. It was mostly getting married, getting pregnant, having that baby, and dying. And so we don't really like, did she want to be queen? Was she angling for it with her brothers? Were her brothers the ones who were angling for it for her? Did she just get swept up in a thing where it's like, well, if the king wants you to be his, you know, his mistress or his future wife, you can't really say no. That's not like a great option for you. It's hard. There's not a lot of evidence.
Or were they genuinely in love?
Yes.
So when Jane died after the birth of Edward, Henry did not marry for 2 years. He didn't even start thinking about it for 2 years. And so historians agreed that that was him genuinely mourning Jane Seymour. So a lot of shows, the Tudors, this show creates the idea that Jane and Henry were probably truly in love.
Yeah.
Whether or not he really understood the concept of love, because he was definitely at some point in love with Katherine of Aragon. Like they had a very really like wonderful initial first like few honeymoon years.
Yeah.
And then shit hit the fan. But
yeah, it's funny. I believe that he truly loved the first three. And then I think that with Catherine Howard, he was more like enamored, obsessed versus like true love. But I do think that he truly loved the first three. I think it's telling of like what kind of person that Henry was, that he always said that Jane Seymour was like his true love, was like, you know, the one that he wanted to be buried next to. He wanted to be buried next to Jane. Is arguably the one he knew for the least amount of time, the one who gave him the son he always wanted, and then did the best thing you could possibly do for Henry, which is dying promptly afterwards, having never questioned anything he's ever said or done.
That's true.
And he wasn't even necessarily that nice to Jane Seymour either. There are some accounts that he told her when she pushed back on like she wanted to reunite him with Mary, his daughter from Katherine of Aragon, who was very Catholic and obviously pretty pissed about the whole situation overall. And she was trying to like reconcile them. And he basically said to her something along the lines of like, I took off the head of the last one. You should be careful. Like directly threatened her life.
Don't they at some point get them together, or she encourages it at least?
I think she encourages it, and then I think that is when Mary starts to be able to like come back to court and things like that. I don't know if that's when he put her back in the succession. I think that was later with Catherine Parr.
That was Catherine Parr.
Yeah. But she started that process of like reuniting him with his kids, that he was like suddenly like, oh, you don't count. You're a spare now.
And I think Anne of Cleves also had a pretty decent relationship with Mary as well.
I think both Mary and Elizabeth.
Yeah. Wild. So Jane's song is the only song in the production that's like a rock ballad.
Like a ballad. So if you had to guess
the inspiration?
What her queen inspiration was, what would
hers
you
is
guess?
Taylor Swift, isn't it?
No.
Really?
It is Adele and Sia. So
I get the Adele.
I see the Adele.
Sia I see with the riffs and stuff, but the Adele is spot on. That's perfect. Okay, no, I get that. I loved this song largely because like that's.
So I think it's such a pretty song.
More my jam.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it part of that is as like a singer, I listen to that and I go, ooh, talent. Like I really like that one required her to work. Some of the other ones, not that they were not. Like, not that it wasn't challenging, but some of them had, it was almost so character driven, as in like a character actress.
Yeah.
That like they added unnecessary quirks. I guess like it's like if you're playing a princess and you play with the princess voice, like it sounds fake. And there were a couple of times where some of the other ones sounded fake. And this one, I think I really enjoyed. You got to actually hear the actresses' musical quality, and I think that the song, like I actually love the song, like that's the only song from the whole show that I would be like I would learn that.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a really pretty song, and I do think like Jane in general, like you have to like have a take on Jane Seymour because there's not a lot to work with. So you can sort of take her in different directions, which I think every time I watch like a Tudor thing, I'm always like, "Oh man, I wish somebody would like have an interesting take on Jane Seymour. Just give me something." And I think that this was at least something that they kind of pulled together a take on her, and I really liked it. I thought it was nice because all the other songs are really upbeat. They gave her like a nice good power ballad. And
mhm,
I will say the actress on the when I saw the Broadway show had like a really good voice, like a really like deep, like rich voice. And when she
mhm.
belted at the end, like she belted, everybody was
Mm,
like cheering, everybody was clapping.
that's
So
awesome.
she like really commanded the room, which I thought was really awesome.
Yeah, I think like if I was ever to be in this musical, on principle, I could never play Anne. I could never.
It's
I'd be like,
too
unless
wrong.
we change this, it's too
We need
wrong.
to we need to change a bunch of lyrics to the song and also her entire characterization. Are
And
we all cool with
also,
that?
yeah, yeah, I would not be able to play Anne uh, Boleyn. But I would play Jane. I would play Jane or Anne of Cleves or Catherine Parr. I mean, I guess any of them, but I liked Jane Seymour's song the most.
Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful song. I think it's like
Hmm.
it also like really can stand a little bit away from the show as well. There's some songs in the show that I think like you take them out of the show and you just listen to it and you're like, I don't. All right. But this one, I think you could just like if it's shuffled onto you're listening in the car and it just shuffled onto
Yes.
I think it's called Heart of Stone. I think
Yeah.
you would just rock out to it. You wouldn't be like, "Oh, yeah, no, it's weird. You need all this context to enjoy this song." I think you could just enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the other things about this one that I really liked, okay, my train of thought literally went through. Like, I don't know if you could actually see it
Just
physically
out.
flying.
Ooh.
What was I gonna say?
It was something else that you liked
Um,
about the song.
yeah, but I don't remember. I don't. Oh, the idea of like heart of stone, where you hear most people use the cliche a heart of stone to mean like they don't have any emotions. Their heart is unbreak. Like their heart cannot accept emotions, and hers was the other way. That no matter what you do to me, it is going to stay the same. I am stone. I am the surf that crashes against the ocean. That was wrong. That phrase is wrong. What am I trying to say? A rock.
Like
Tide hits
the rock,
rock.
yeah.
Rock stays. Cavemen, speak good, Amy. I get paid to speak for a living, if you
You're
can
doing
believe
great.
it.
You're doing great.
Thanks. So then we get to the House of Holbein where they're boopity boopity. We're gonna skip that. I hated it. Moving
Yeah,
on,
that was a rave in the middle. Then we get straight to Anne of Cleves, which I think we
which we
talked
kind of talked
about
about.
a little
Yeah,
bit. I love her song. I think it's
yeah, it's
probably
clearly
the
clever.
highest energy song in the show. People in the audience lost their mind over this song. She had so much energy, the actress who was playing Anne of Cleves at the time, and she was like really she was dancing, she was really getting in
I
there, getting
love that.
down. And halfway through she like when she talks about like taking off her I don't know, her cape or something, her stole to go into a party. She takes off like the outside of her costume and it's like a bodysuit, like a leotard, and everybody
Yes.
screamed and everything. Like she was down, she was
Oh,
like
she
doing
was having
dances.
fun.
She was great. She was a great performer, and you can
That's
feel the
awesome.
energy in that song. I feel like whoever they cast for that role has to be like has to kind of be performing to the audience as much as
Hmm.
anything else because that song's really high energy and I don't think it would work if you had somebody who was kind of low energy in that song. Like I don't know how that works, but I do love the premise of the song is hilarious. It's just like because the whole premise of the show is that they're all competing to see who had it worse, and she's like, oh no, I'm crying into my piles of money, into my independent woman lifestyle. It's so hard to be me, Anne of Cleves, who I believe actually of all of them actually even lived the longest.
I think so too. I'm
I
gonna
think
Google
she
that.
outlived Catherine Parr. They always talk about Catherine Parr as being the one who survived, but Anne of Cleves actually outlived them all. She was just like chilling in her castles. Another thing, I noticed that they missed some opportunities within the show to like they missed some opportunities of highlighting weird ways in which all these queens were connected, which I thought was bizarre because so we'll talk about Catherine Howard in like a minute, but Catherine Howard and Anne Boleyn, both of
Are straight up
who
related.
lost their heads, were cousins. They were related.
Yeah.
And then Anne Boleyn, Anne of Cleves, one of her properties that she inherits is Hever
Is it
Castle,
Hever?
the
Hilarious.
childhood home of Anne Boleyn. So, like, and she spent some amount of time at Hever Castle. It would have been funny in the song to have a line like "I took your castle," or something like that. Like just like since they're like in some of these, in some of these songs, they're kind of poking fun at each other. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Catherine Howard says, "I'm like the 10 amongst you threes," or something like that.
Yes.
Which is
they all go rude.
It's very funny, but like at the same time, like what a missed opportunity to not point out that, like she had one of the castles she's talking about is Anne Boleyn's, which is something that was so funny. And I don't know if I knew it before I went to Hever Castle that was like they basically were both associated with that castle. It's so funny.
I didn't know that till right now. You have Tudor schooled me. That's pretty impressive. You found something I didn't know. Like, wow.
fun Tudor facts is what this episode should be called. So if you had to guess Anne of Cleves Queenspiration, what would you guess?
I don't remember her song very much. So I don't know.
It was a little bit more. I wouldn't say it was like rap, but it was Pink? A little bit rap adjacent. It's Nicki Minaj and Rihanna.
Okay,
and I could kind of see that
Minaj,
with like the attitude in that song. It's like, I'm the queen of the castle. Like my profile, he didn't like my profile picture, which I think is very funny. They also in the stage show had a thing funny. Where like he was like swiping, and they would they would have like, one of the actresses pretend to be a queen. He would like swipe no on her, and the light around the back of the stage would go like like red or green.
That's really
I also
clever.
think it's funny because obviously you and I know us, these Tudor scholars, but what happened was that Anne of Cleves came over from Germany. He had seen her portrait, said that's a hottie, yaddy yaddy, gotta marry her. She comes over, he's like, I hate her. I like her not. She's ugly. I can't believe I have to marry her. Thomas Cromwell had set up this match, and
so he's booked.
Amongst other reasons, there were some other things swirling around, but it was one of the reasons that contributed to him losing his own head. I laugh about as somebody who
I know, me too.
Who's an Anne fan. It's like, oh, what comes around goes around, huh, Thomas? But I think what's really funny is like you look at the pictures and you're like, she was very pretty. What was his issue? And he was like, oh, she didn't look like her portrait. But like nobody has his. At the time period, nobody was like, and then this lady came out and she was straight ugly, and we were all like, what happened? Everybody was like, no, she was like pretty nice, like very pretty. What apparently what happened was that at the time, these like the guys were really into these like games of like courtly love. It was like this thing where it's like, if you were jousting, the woman would put like a little trinket. She would tie like a little scarf on your jousting rod. And
chivalry.
And he was really into that stuff. In fact, the reason he had this horrible like giant like oozing ulcer on his
leg
was because he almost died from a jousting accident, a truly insane thing to do as a king, to just be jousting all the time. It was wild back then. It's like nobody could tell him, no, don't do that. It's insane.
He would do it anyway.
And some people actually, there are some theories that like his personality switch from like his younger years to his older years, where he becomes like just a tyrant, maybe had to do with like constant concussions and head injuries, which you know what, maybe
makes sense.
So he was like, you know what she's gonna love, it would be really funny if I come in a disguise and I like sneak up on her and go like and kiss her, and she'll love that. And because obviously he knew women as somebody who'd been married several times and taken and they'd all died. And he knew what women really loved is when old smelly strangers
Lecherous old men
kiss them straight on the lips without any kind of introduction. So
Yeah.
what happened is she did exactly what any normal person would do. She was like, "Ew, get away from me, get off of me. Who are you? You're so strange and gross." And he was like, "I hate her." Like he was humiliated.
Yes.
And could never perform after that his husbandly duties. It's she gets a bad rap for being like not cute, but I think that since nobody else at the time was like, ew, she's not that pretty, I think what's most likely is that she was very lovely and that she had just humiliated him in public.
Uh-huh. And he couldn't get it up, and he was like, no, I can't get it up because she's ugly.
Because
and
she's
that's
awful.
clearly a her problem. And we're like, sounds like a you problem.
Sounds like a you problem. Yeah, also, a pot kettle, man. This is not a period of this was not his golden years. Let's put it that way.
No, and that was the problem with Catherine Parr. Not Catherine Parr.
Catherine Howard.
Thank you. Is the wife number 5 is this, like, I think she was 15, 16, 17. I think she was 15.
The playbill says 17, but she was somewhere between 15 and 17 when they got married. So she was probably younger than that when she caught his eye, which sir.
And he was like straight up limping, oozing wound, smelled. There's all kinds of like stuff where Catherine Howard is talking about like how disgusting he is.
Yeah.
And she's like, I just want a bro to be with who don't smell, man. So she and Thomas Culpeper get into this relationship, and it was arguably like very sweet and really dynamic and very flirtatious and like really lustful relationship. And so that was the one that, like, again, we kind of talked about it earlier. I was like, I don't know if I like the interpretation of this. Again, it's a cool idea. It's not historically accurate, but it's a good story.
Yeah,
I'll go with it.
I think that story that they were I got where they were trying to go with her story, which is this idea of like the limited power you had as a woman back then. Some of it was your sexuality, and she kind of learned that very like way too young and was excited by it initially and then got tired of it as time went on, and it turned out that all anybody ever wanted from her, all any man ever wanted from her was just sex. And that's sort of the progression of the song. I will say, I also, early in the song, she talks about her tutor, right? Like her tutor kind of like teaching her things, which is like very heavily suggestive. There's a line where she said she is 13 going on 30, which should have, I think that line could have been cut very easily. I was like, I know that we get by the end of the song, we get to the point where she's like, no, I don't like this anymore.
Yeah.
But that's not a great line. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it was a little much. So we're getting towards the end of our hour.
Yeah. So let's get to Catherine Parr. So she is
who I love.
Last. Catherine Parr is a queen.
Everybody loves Catherine Parr. Catherine Parr was like, it's all right, Henry. You very sweet old man. I'll take care of him and then he'll die and I can marry who I want.
It'll be great. It's so funny. Again, things that she did, the show, the connections between queens that the show didn't really point out that are weird and funny. The man that she talks about having to say goodbye to early in the song because Henry wants to marry her is none other than Thomas Seymour, Jane Seymour's brother. Weird that they don't
didn't know that.
Yeah. Weird that they don't mention that at all. All these women are weirdly interconnected, probably because there were only like 20 people in the whole court and they were all named Catherine or Anne.
Or married to someone named Catherine and Anne.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was, so they didn't, I thought that was a weird, like omission. Like that's a really fun thing that you could have like built into. Yeah, played with, but okay.
Yeah, I liked Catherine's song. I liked her song of like, I don't need your love, which is very much true. She was like, you know what? You need a queen. I need a position. I need my own household. I need money. And fully aware, you are a lecherous old man. You will probably die soon. When you die, I'd like to be set up. And it was always like Catherine Parr is always shown as a very regal, elegant woman. So this was never conniving on her part. It was just real. It's kind of like her and Anne of Cleves, I feel like, were making decisions that at that time were the only option for them, but they were making wise choices. I think we could say that none of the other ones made, well, Katherine of Aragon, well, she was just screwed. But like,
yeah, she did not have good choices.
And technically, Anne Boleyn was forced into making these choices by her father and the Duke of Norfolk. So
yeah, I think Anne Boleyn played the game until she got played by the game. Like I think that she was playing a high stakes game, and I think
she was doing pretty good.
And she did really good for a while, and then not so well. But yeah, I think there's a line in the song where she says, "When the king says it's you," and I think that's kind of what it came down to. If the king looked over and like said, "Oh, I want to marry you," and you did not have a good excuse for why that could not be, you were marrying the king. There was no getting out of it. So like, it wasn't even that she was like trying to, set herself up, which, it did do pretty nicely for her, but like, she didn't have other choices. There was no choice.
The king says marry you, you marry him.
Exactly. Who do you think her queen inspirations were?
I don't remember her song. I remember the lyrics, but I don't remember the vibe of it.
Yeah. So hers were Alicia Keys and somebody called Amelie Sandy. So I don't actually know who that is. But the Alicia Keys I can definitely see. Mm-hmm. So that takes us through all of the Queen's songs. I'm sure you feel like you were at the show. I will say that the show had like, I've never been to a Broadway show where the whole time we were like screaming and cheering through the whole thing. It was like being at like a concert more than it was awesome. Like being at a show. So before we hop off, I would love to do a little bit of on Supergirl Radio, we call it boardroom or ballroom, but a little bit of fashion judgment. So here is the full list of the queens. So I have all of their outfits, and we're just going to quickly run through them. So here is Katherine of Aragon's. Now, what I like about this is like her little queenly headband. I think that like it's like she has on a crown.
Uh-huh. And I like the choice of her wearing gold because it's very reminiscent of her Spanish history.
Oh, yeah.
As well as the argument that she is the, quote, true queen. And I think gold represents that. Ooh, that's really cool. Wow, that's stunning. I love hers.
Hers is also gorgeous.
More modest.
It is more modest. I like that she's got the big sleeves as well. Mm-hmm. And I love that you mentioned the gold. I think that's so smart. Yeah, exactly. She's kind of pulling in her Spanish heritage and like really, really, I think of all of the outfits, hers is the most regal. Now,
very much so.
We're going to skip to Anne Boleyn's. So Anne Boleyn's, okay. The thing I noticed a lot is that there's a big motif throughout the show of green sleeves, which I thought was funny.
I loved that. I loved that so much.
I don't think it, I looked it up. It's not really historically accurate. Nobody wrote green sleeves for Anne Boleyn, but there was a rumor apparently that Henry had written the old-timey green sleeve song for Anne Boleyn, and I guess that got passed around. Apparently, according to Wikipedia, it was in like a musical style that didn't popularize until like years and years after Henry VIII. So unlikely that that's true, but that's the reason I think that you see in her outfit like the green. She's sort of like known for the green outfit.
Yes, she's very famous for that one green habit that she wore at some point. I think it's in her portrait. There is a portrait where she's wearing green. Or it was the friend. I don't know. And I feel like in every interpretation of her, she wears green.
I think she does. Yeah, she does wear green. I liked that they got the Anne Boleyn bee on there.
Yes.
I wish it stood out more on the costume.
Wish it was pearls.
Yeah, because they made it green, so it kind of just fades into the rest of the outfit. Yeah. And like, if you have a character who has an iconic necklace that like people know on site, like just use it, I think, is the
Yes,
thing.
just go for it.
Otherwise, I don't have like too much of an issue with her outfit. It's not as cool as some of the other ones. I like her little Sailor Moon buns. I don't really know
Yes.
what they I don't understand them, but I appreciate them.
It fits in the character that they decided to portray.
Exactly. She has like a skater girl vibe, which
Yes,
works
very much so.
The whole Avril Lavigne. The song is "Don't Lose Your Head." It's spelled U-R. So
Oh
it's
my God,
you
that
know,
drove me nuts. I was
she's
like,
just
nope.
a skater boy.
I was like, swipe left.
That takes us to Jane's costume. So Jane's costume, I think you mentioned it with Catherine's, but I noticed in the show also.
Oh.
It's more it's a little bit more covered up. She's got like the skirt is longer. She's got sleeves, which a lot of them don't have.
Yeah.
There's not as much skin showing on this, which I think makes sense for Jane. We don't know a lot about her, but we can assume that like she cared a bit about her modesty, and she's kind of like
very demure.
Yeah, she kind of like went along to get along, and she's kind of the mama, right? Like the thing that she's most well known for arguably is just having a baby. So
and you notice the color's black. That I think like the concept of grief works into that, like the idea that this was the only black and white, like she was very pure and demure, and that black represents the grief that Henry had over her, that he was the only one he truly grieved, which completely unrelated to this. If anyone ever watches The Tudors, Morgan, I know you have.
Of course.
The soundtrack for The Tudors is amazing.
Oh, so good.
The Jane Seymour theme and the Death of Jane Seymour track is... If I ever have to do anything where I need to get into a deeply emotional state, that is the track. Like that scene will make me cry every time, where he's like, please don't leave me. And then it cuts straight to her funeral. The music. Oh, Morgan, I'll send it to you afterwards.
Oh, yeah, send it to me. I also
thou mightst cry.
I also love the from the Tudors, the Henry and Anne like love song. I think that one's
yes,
so good.
I know exactly the one you're talking about.
There have been a lot of good Anne Boleyns, but I still think that Natalie Dormer in the Tudors is like my definitive Anne Boleyn. She's like, she's good at being ambitious and kind of sly and cunning, but she's also good at being like, authentic and smart.
Yes.
I thought Natalie Dormer kind of set the bar on being Anne Boleyn.
Agreed. I don't think. Yeah. No. Agreed. Okay. So let's Catherine...
go to this is Anne of Cleves. So you can kind of see like that you can see this is the energy that she brought to the whole performance. Yes. All the girls in the background are kind of like cheering for her, hyping her up. You can see what's the word I'm looking for? It's sort of the little coat that she has on top.
Yeah.
That she took off about halfway through.
Oh, that's right. Okay. That's really cool.
She's talking about like taking off her coat to go into a party. And then it was just like, like a bodysuit essentially underneath. So I really liked this. I think the coat on top gives like a little bit of it looks a little different than the other girls. So it kind of harkens back to the
German.
Fact that she's German. She's not from England. So I think this is a fun one. And red is a fun color, I think, for her. Then we get to Catherine Howard, who they leaned hard into the Ariana Grande of it all. She's got that high ponytail.
Yeah. I like that. And especially if you say she was whipping that hair around, that's great. Use your costume, girl.
Yeah, she was doing some great hair flips and hair tricks with that thing, just like whipping it around. I think that like the fact that it's kind of like a bustier sort of thing, it does look a little bit like, this looks like something I could literally see Ariana Grande wearing. Yeah. I think it works really well for the Catherine Howard character. And then that takes us to Catherine Parr, which I think is interesting. She's the only one that has pants. Which I think is supposed to be maybe like a nod to the fact that she's a little bit more modern in terms of like a modern woman, or at least she's the only one that the play lets be like smart and called out to be smart. They mention that she like, looks and things like that. They don't really mention any of the other ones doing smart things, which they all did. I mean, I guess Jane Seymour did something, but Like,
There's the most ultimate rip on Jane Seymour. I guess she did something.
I guess she did something. Arguably, Jane Seymour and Catherine Howard probably didn't like write any books or start any clubs or anything. But the other three, at least, Katherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, and Catherine Parr, were all like incredibly intelligent, educated women. So I think that the fact that she gets to like have some pants is like supposed to be, she's getting to wear the pants of this situation.
And I think, I mean, at its bare basic, it's a way to get her to stand out because she's the one who survived. But at like a deeper level, you can look at it in the fact that the other women are wearing skirts because to an extent they have to attract him. And I think Catherine Parr doesn't really need to do that. At this point, Henry's looking for stability. He is looking for a companion. And she doesn't need to do that. She just happens to be at the right place in the right time to catch the king's eye. And she's not even trying. And I think that that's the difference because ultimately, Catherine Howard even... she was pushed into this. She had to try. All of them at some point had to try to get Henry's eye. Catherine Parr is one of the only ones who never actually has to try. It just happens. And so she's like, you know what? I don't need to wear a skirt. I got pants.
That's all I need. I'm going to be comfy up here when I dance. So I thought it would be fun to sort of end our discussion by doing the thing that they tell you not to do at the end of the show, which is explicitly rank the women against each other. So the premise of the show is that they're all competing to see who had it worst. Now, Amy, if you were to rank who had it worst of these Tudor women, what would your ranking be?
Are we talking 6 or actual history?
Actual history. Who had it worst?
Katherine of Aragon.
Interesting.
I have been reading a lot about how poorly she was treated when she first came. After Arthur died for years, straight up 7 years, they ignored her. She finally falls in love with the king. She does absolutely everything she can to be a wonderful wife, and he kicks her to the curb. She dies alone and doesn't even get to see her daughter. Like, Anne Boleyn's a close second. But it's weird because Anne Boleyn is definitely, she's the one who I want to argue as my first.
Yeah.
But currently, like, Katherine of Aragon, she gave so much. And ultimately, they were very much in love. So on top of the fact that she loses everything, she also loses the man she loves.
Ooh.
And she loved him through it all. And I think Anne Boleyn at a certain point probably stopped that. I think at a certain point she's like, you're fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Katherine of Aragon truly loved Henry to the very end, and he did nothing but spit in her face.
That is you make a good argument for her being the one who had it the worst. I'm going to go in a different direction. I think that Catherine Howard had it the worst.
Okay, I was about to say you're going to choose Catherine Howard.
I am. So she, unlike a lot of the other women, she was not a high class like she was not born into a certain class of like nobility. She was I think she lived with her grandmother for a while in kind of like a boarding house. She sort of had the run of things, which is how she got into situations with men, or, you know, to be more accurate, they got into situations with her since she was a child. She was taken advantage of since she was small. Then she gets to be the ripe age of like 16 and catches the king's eye. He's an old man with a gross leg. But she doesn't have a choice in marrying him. She's not prepared to be Queen of England in any way. At all. Unlike, Catherine of Aragon or Anne Boleyn, these women, highly accomplished, highly educated, at the best courts in Europe. She's just some girl who lived in England and like got a huge promotion she was not ready for. She has an actual love connection with somebody, and they have a relationship, and then that is what ends up getting her beheaded. She was just wholly unprepared for the situation she ended up in. I think you could make the argument that like Anne Boleyn had it pretty bad, and she'd probably be my like number 2. But I would argue that like if you asked Anne Boleyn like was it worth it, she'd be like, I mean, my daughter was queen, wasn't she?
Yeah, like what legacy did Catherine Howard leave behind?
She didn't have. Yeah, it's
Culpeper
tough.
dies. That's also a really good point, because you could say the same with Katherine of Aragon. At least she left behind Mary, who
left behind Mary, yeah.
And ultimately, even if it didn't work out, Mary worked to bring the Catholic Church back, which that whole history with how things got between her and Elizabeth and Protestant Catholicism, like straight up bringing the Spanish Inquisition to England, like there are some problems with that history. But yeah, if you think about
her daughter
Catherine Howard, didn't even make it to 20. Yes. Her daughter eventually got to be queen.
Catherine Howard died in her, like, probably most likely. They don't even know when she was actually born. I think that's how little they know about her, because she just kind of came from nowhere and no one was expecting her. So she probably died in her early 20s, if that. And like, yeah, poor Catherine was like, she's not one of my favorites, but she really got, I think, the rawest deal. I don't think any of us would argue that Anne of Cleves is at the bottom of that list of who had it worse.
Anne of Cleves had it best. She straight up was like, oh, yeah, no, I'm cool with that. Fine, bro. And I have to say that, the Tudors, the TV show, has a lot of historical inaccuracies. There are some things that are wrong, and they're like blatantly wrong.
So wrong.
Charles Brandon with the sister of Henry, all wrong.
Well,
although they eventually get together.
They combined two of Henry's sisters because they didn't think that audiences could keep track of the fact that he had two sisters.
Yes. Like, so it was a mess. So that whole section was a mess. But overall, I think that their portrayal of the wives is really well done. I mean, it's
well done. Yeah,
it's exceptional. And Catherine Howard's is her, like, the way that they chose to have her story at the end, where they don't even put her in the Tower of London. She just, like, she literally hears the music of life, and she's getting ready to go to the scaffold to get her head chopped off. And in the show, she's dancing to this beautiful ballet music. And at the end, she's like, life is beautiful. Like, I wish I got a chance
I think
to
they did such a good job with her, because another, like, a little detail about Catherine Howard that always gets me is that she asked for them to bring out the block so she could practice putting her head on it. That is historically accurate. That is a thing that she actually did. Meanwhile, Anne Boleyn, when she was in the tower, was fully just like unraveling and was like, saying like, it's not gonna, as long as I'm in here, it's gonna stop raining, or it's going to rain all the time. Yeah, she was like, a curse upon all your heads, essentially.
Yeah, including mine, which is going to roll. So, question: had she requested the sword?
She did.
I don't remember.
Yeah, she requested that they bring in, like, this special swordsman from France. She had like a VIP execution because
so she could have a clean chop.
Yeah, because back then a clean chop was the best that you were going to hope for when they were going to execute you, and it was not guaranteed. It took them 3 chops to take Thomas Cromwell's head off his body.
And so Buckingham, I think, too.
Once again, and won.
We all have something in for Thomas Cromwell. But now we got to watch Wolf Hall, and then we're probably going to feel for Thomas Cromwell.
Wolf Hall is so good.
Is it really good?
Have you seen the BBC series?
No, but it's on my list. The one with the guy from Homeland.
He is fantastic. He's great as Henry. The guy who plays Thomas Cromwell is, like, phenomenal. Just so good in that role. And then Claire Foy, who I believe is like the young Queen Elizabeth in The Crown, is Anne Boleyn, and she's also very good.
Ooh, okay. So, that's on my list. Maybe we'll do that. I'll just add it to my list of things to get done.
So Amy,
we should just do a whole, like, let's be honest, you and I should do a podcast about Tudor history.
Our spin-off Tudor podcast. Okay, Amy.
Spin-off Tudor podcast.
This is the hard one as we wrap this up. If you had to rank all of your favorite queens, historical queens, what's the ranking that
of these 6?
Of these 6, yeah. Of the 6 wives of Henry VIII.
Just spouting them off. It would be Anne Boleyn, Anne of Cleves, Katherine of Aragon, Parr, no. But okay, it would be I was like, hold on, I'm changing it. It would be Boleyn, Cleves, Aragon, Howard, Parr, Seymour.
Ooh, fascinating. So our
Yeah.
our top is very similar. So I have like a clear top and bottom, and like the
Hmm.
middle is so squishy for me. But Anne Boleyn obviously is my top.
Obviously. And Boleyn's our
Then
girl.
I really struggle between like Anne of Cleves and Catherine of Aragon, because I think of every time I think of that like Blackfriars speech that Catherine of Aragon gave, where she was just like, "I've been nothing but great to you. I don't
Oh,
really
it's
know why
so
you're
good
doing this,"
though.
and
Yeah.
like convince them not to go, like not to agree with Henry about the divorce. Like she
Yeah.
changed a bunch of
She
men's
was
minds
a
in the
queen.
1500s.
Absolutely.
Like that is impressive. So I have to go. I think even though I love Anne of Cleves, I have to go with Catherine of Aragon, Anne of Cleves,
Yeah.
Catherine Parr, and then my bottom two is Catherine Howard and Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour
See,
just does nothing for me.
Jane Seymour does nothing for me, but I put
Yeah.
Howard above Parr, just because
Interesting.
as an interest, almost
Yeah,
like you're
yeah,
just more
no.
fascinating to me. Like your story is more interesting and fascinating. And yeah, you make a really good point for putting Catherine of Aragon higher. And I think with how much I've been loving reading about her, I'll have to send you the book that I'm reading.
Yes,
It. The
please do.
audiobook's spectacular. It's by, is it Alison Weir? It might be
Ooh.
Alison Weir.
I've read
Alison Weir
I've read
does,
something from Alison Weir before, and
yeah,
she's pretty good.
she's really good with her. It's called the Six Tudor Queens series, and she does one for each queen. And apparently, the
Ooh.
Catherine of Aragon one is excellent, and then the Anne Boleyn one was very poorly reviewed,
Oh, yeah,
which is
I feel like
frustrating.
I've stayed away from some of her stuff because I feel like the Anne Boleyn stuff has been so-so. But if you
Hmm.
ever wanna do like a straight like historical biography, like not fiction, nonfiction,
Hmm.
the Eric Ives Anne Boleyn book is really well done, like incredibly researched and
I think I have it.
well reported.
Yeah, and of course, all of Philippa Gregory's stuff is really well done. Definitely dramatized, but really well done. If you really want to dive into pre-Tudor history and go into the War of the Roses and the Plantagenets,
Ooh.
the White Queen, the Red Queen. Did you ever read those?
I haven't, but that period of time is something where I really want to dive into, because I know
Oh,
like fuzzy outlines of what happens then, but
oh,
I don't really know the details.
it's so good. And it's also well represented in Shakespeare's writing. Henry V, Richard III. Like
Yeah.
it really, oh, it's really good. So yeah, that'll wrap it up for six. So ultimately, did you love seeing the production?
I ultimately did. Like, yes, I had problems with the portrayal of Aiden, but like the energy level in that, like when we left, Mike turned to me and said, like, I don't know that I've like enjoyed a Broadway show that much, because like the
That's
whole
amazing.
time we were cheering, we were like wooing, like after every song, like during songs, like during the Anne of Cleves song, that like the energy level of the crowd was like just phenomenal. Like I don't think I've
I love
ever
that.
been in a Broadway show where the energy level was that high. So if six comes around to like your town, I know it's touring. I think it's going to be in Seattle soon. It's going to be in Toronto soon. I highly recommend it if you want to go.
Okay.
Ticket. It is fun. Is it the most historically accurate? No. Will you have a good
No,
time? Yes, you will.
I love that. That's the best way to look at it. And I
Uh,
think I think it should be our personal mission to get Kat to go see this
yes,
musical, because I think she would really love it,
I
and I
think
think she might
you'll love it.
actually appreciate history as presented in a rock concert.
I think that would help get Cat into the history. It's like
I think so too.
when you're trying to give your dog a pill and you like put it in some cheese. Like we'll
We're
put
wrapping
the
the history in a
history
little turkey lunch meat for you, Kat.
in like a little rock opera, and we'll give it to you. Do you like it now? And we'll see if that changes her mind. Okay, so I think that's going to wrap us up on six
Yes.
and our Tudor history episode. Amy, where can people find you on the internet?
You guys can find me on Instagram, Amy_hip, HYP. You can also find me performing, we were just talking about Shakespeare, in Macbeth here in San Diego, patioplayhouse.com/Macbeth. I am Lady Macbeth. Things are getting real cool. It's going to be a very long play. So if you guys come see it, we didn't cut it. Oh my God. It's a 3-hour long Shakespeare play on a school night. But I got to tell
Whoa.
you, Macbeth and my, our scenes slap. Slay
Uh-oh.
Queen. It's so good. Yeah, Morgan, where can people find you online?
Well, I'm jealous I can't go see your production. I'm very sad that like I don't happen to be traveling for work at the same time like I did for
Like
one
we
of
did
your
last
last
time.
shows. But I am there in spirit. People can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Mojotastic, and they can also find me as a co-host on Supergirl Radio, where we banked some episodes because Rebecca's on a much deserved vacation, and then
Good for
when
her.
we come back, I think we're going to be talking about. She's going to be talking about Superman Celebration, and then we're going to be talking about the Flash movie, the greatest movie of all time. So we'll see. We'll see. Everybody's hyping it up. I can't see it ever going wrong if you overhype something.
I feel like at
so.
the end, though, they like all had a knife to their throat and they're like, you better say this was a good show or else.
And that's kind of what
Like,
it feels like. Everybody was like,
it
it changed
it
my
can't
life.
possibly have been that good.
Like, did it
can't.
really, Jaden
It
Smith,
can't.
change your life, or did they give you a big pile of money to say that? We'll find
Yeah,
out
right?
in a few short weeks,
Yes.
and we will report back. You can find us, the Legendary Ladies, on YouTube at the Legendary Ladies. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at the Legendary
Ooh.
Ladies. You can also find us on Twitter at legends_podcast. And finally, you can email us if you have complicated Tudor Queen thoughts that you want to give us. We
Or
would
questions.
actually, or questions. We would be so excited for that. Kat would not be excited for that. We just really want to talk. You can see how desperate both of us are to talk to each other about this. We're that desperate to talk to anyone about this. No one cares about this but us. So send that all to thelegendaryladies@gmail.com. You can also find us on the Legendary Ladies is it the Legendary Ladies podcast.com is our website,
And the
which
Patreon.
I briefly blanked out. And yes, our Patreon, which where you can get bonus content, extra episodes, all that kind of good stuff. We're going to be
live.
Listen live. Yeah, you can listen live. You can get early access to episodes. You can listen to them or watch them days before we release them publicly. So lots of fun stuff on the Patreon. You can find that at patreon.com/the Legendary Ladies. And
So I think that's going to wrap us up, right?
I think so. I think we did all of our housekeeping at the end.
We did all the things. So thank you all so much for listening. Stay tuned next week. Kat and Morgan are going to do their duo episode about Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso,
which I've not seen.
The season finale, the series finale. No one will confirm. So who knows?
Who knows?
We will be talking about that next week.
And that's going to wrap it up for us. Thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. You all have a wonderful week and stay legendary.